Solving quadratic equations by using square roots. Our objective is to simply solve quadratic equations using square roots. Why learn this? Square roots can be used to find how much fencing is needed for a pen at the zoo. When you take the square root of a positive real number and the sign of the square root is not indicated, you must find both the positive and the negative square root. Think of it this way. If you had 3 squared, that equals positive 9. Well, what if you had the quantity negative 3 squared? This equals positive 9 as well. So when you take the square root, when solving, you need to include both because it could have been either. The square root property. To solve a quadratic equation in the form x squared equals a, take the square root of both sides. Just don't forget that plus or minus. Let's try a few examples. So we're going to solve using square roots. We want to take the square root of both sides because we want to get x by itself. So we take the square root of both sides. That leaves us with just x, and then it's plus or minus the square root of 16. Square root of 16 is 4, so the answer is plus or minus 4. You can write it out separately as well. When you try to take the square root of both sides here, you end up taking the square root of a negative number. You can't take the square root of a negative number, so there are no real solutions. Once again, if you're trying to take the square root, you can't take the square root of a negative number and have a real solution. Take a moment and pause the video and try these next 3 on your own. When you return to the video, the answer for each will be revealed below. And there you have it. Now, sometimes when trying to solve using square roots, the x squared is not by itself. So you need to do that first before you can take the square root of both sides. For example, here we would have to subtract 5 from both sides first. Then we have x squared equals, in this case, 0. Now we can take the square root of both sides. And we have plus or minus the square root of 0. And since the square root of 0 is 0, and you can't have a positive or negative 0, you simply have x equals just 0. In this one here, we have a couple steps we need to do. Remember, we want to get this x squared by itself before we start using our square roots. So we're going to add 25 to both sides. And we have 4x squared equals 25. Then we're going to divide by 4 on both sides. Once again, trying to get this x squared by itself. So now we have 25 over 4. Take the square root of both sides. So we have x equals plus or minus the square root of 25 over 4. To simplify this, you end up with x equals plus or minus. Then we have the square root of 25, which is 5, and the square root of 4, which is 2. Take a moment and pause the video and try these next 2 on your own. When you return to the video, the answer for both will be revealed. And there you have it. When solving quadratic equations using square roots, you may need to find the square root of a number that is not a perfect square. Everything that we have done so far in this unit has been a perfect square. However, in this case, the answer is an irrational number. You can approximate the solutions. So let's practice. Solve. We're going to round to the nearest hundredth. So we have x squared equals 10. So we're going to still take the square root of both sides. However, the square root of 10 is not a perfect square, meaning it's not going to give you a whole number. So when you take the square root of 10, you end up with, well, that's about 3.16. So x is about plus or minus 3.16, or 3 16/100ths. You can write it out separate as well. Take a moment and try these next two on your own. When you return to the video, the answer will be revealed below. And there you have it. Now let's try a consumer application. A zookeeper is buying fencing to enclose a pen at the zoo. The pen is an isosceles right triangle. There is already a fence on the side that borders the path. The area of the pen will be 4,500 square feet. The zookeeper can buy the fencing in whole feet only. How many feet of fencing should he buy? Let x represent the length of one of the sides. So to start, we want to look at what is the area of a triangle. The area of a triangle is 1/2 base times height. So let's fill in what we know. We know our base and our height are both x, and then our area is 4,500 square feet. So now we simply need to solve for x. To start, we're going to multiply both sides by 2, which is going to leave us with x squared equals 9,000. Then we can take the square root of both sides, so we have x equals plus or minus the square root of 9,000. When we simplify, we're going to have a decimal because 9,000 is not a perfect square. So we have x is about equal to plus or minus 94.9. Now, the problem said how many feet of fencing should he buy, and then the stipulation here was the zookeeper can buy the fencing in whole feet only. So therefore, he needs to buy 95 for one of the x's and then 95 for the other x. So a total of 190 feet of fencing. And this ends our video lesson on solving quadratic equations by using square roots.